Good afternoon, everyone. And today, continuing with some amazing franchise leadership conversations that we've been having over the past couple of days. Focus has been mindset, recovery, growth. Today, we're going to be having some conversations with Brent Dowling of RainTree, which is an amazing franchise development and sales organization, Jackie Bondanza from Houndstown, and Rob Flanagan from Wagon Wash. So we have franchise sales, franchise leadership, and franchisors all in one conversation. Guys, thanks for spending some time with us today.
Thanks for having us.
So if I could start off, Brent, then Jackie, then Rob, guys, just generally your state of mind, how you see your state of business in the franchise world, anything you could share?
Yeah, I think like most people, obviously good and bad. I've got two hats in what I do. I'm a franchisor of a children's art studio, and initially quite heartbreaking to see all those studios close down, and a lot of fear there and worry for those franchisees. But that's quickly changed in the last couple of weeks, and seeing our entire company pivot to virtual lessons and take-home art kits and all sorts of things that are driving revenue and actually increasing new customers. And so there's a lot of positive there. So, of course, good and bad, both on the franchisor side. And with my franchise development hat on, very much the same. We saw a fairly massive plummet of lead flow 2 weeks ago, and that was scary. But just since Monday, we've seen something very different. And we've seen probably the sharpest increase in lead flow in a single week than I've seen in my career in franchise development. We saw our own lead flow go up about 38% across the board. Just in general, we saw Google search queries go up significantly for words like franchise opportunities. So very much what we're seeing right now from the data alone is a surge in interest in franchising, and that part has us excited.
Jackie?
Yeah, so I appreciate the time being able to share what's happening with us over at Houndstown. We are a fully interactive pet care facility. And luckily, we are deemed an essential business because we really are offering essential pet care to people, like nurses and EMTs and first responders who really have no other option for pet care during this time when they need to be out of their house, 12, 16 hours a day, sometimes days at a time. So we are seeing our customers being much appreciative that we are able to stay open for them, to support them. We rolled out a couple of programs pretty immediately after this all began to really show our support for them. And, it's an absolutely challenging time for our franchisees, no doubt. But, our system was founded right before, I should say, the events of 9/11. So our business model was born out of rubble, essentially. Right after 9/11, Mike, the founder, had to pivot his focus to make sure that the business survived through 9/11. We've lived through the recession of 2006. We've lived through a lot of other things in our 20 years. So we feel very confident that we are going to not only make it through this, but really thrive when we all get through this together. So we're remaining very positive. We're very happy to support all of our healthcare workers on the front lines, and we're still seeing lots and lots of dogs come into our facilities every day. So we remain extremely grateful for all of that, for sure.
That's great, Jackie. Hey, Rob, just some initial thoughts?
Yeah, look, crazy times. Kind of what Brent was saying, I wear two hats. There's the franchise company, and then it's all of our corporate stores. I think, to not just add to everything that people are seeing on webinars, I think what I'm seeing that's important that we're really focusing on is what we're calling play offense, not defense. There's a lot of defense right now that's needed to affect, potential revenue declines. But we are constantly on a daily basis with our franchisees communicating about what we're seeing, the retail landscape, what it's going to look like going into Q3, Q4, and what those opportunities are. and that this is really about kind of just getting close, getting through this together, but how powerful this is going to be in Q3, Q4, because from a marketing angle, we got to be honest here. What's happening to our competitors? There's going to be a lot of market share that's going to be available, and how can we really position ourselves to what we're saying pounce, 3 weeks, 4 weeks before those trends start to turn. And we're already thinking about that. We're already talking about it. And psychologically, what we're finding for our franchisees is that creates this lighthouse through this fog. We're going through this, but here's where we're going. And we're really driving that home on a daily basis.
Jackie, I would love your insight, because you're creating the business, or your business is born around the time of September 11th. And I think all of us as business leaders, we have to look back at different times in our careers where we got blindsided by something that was unexpected, whether that's the .com bust or it's September 11th. We talked with Paul Pickett yesterday from Wild Birds, who talked about bird flu and the effect that had on his brand. So when you look back at that, and you even think back in your career, because you've worn multiple hats in your career, does that prepare you for something like this?
I think so, absolutely. I came from the world of book publishing in my previous career, and that is as rocky as it gets. I've been laid off 3 or 4 times in my book publishing career. I've always come back better and stronger than ever. There have always been new opportunities that have been presented to me had that not happened to me. So I came into, running this business with that same optimism. And, when things are great, they're great. And when things are not great, it's time to get moving. And it's time to, I couldn't agree more with what Rob shared. We're looking at this as a long-term game. This is a short-term challenge, but we are in this for the long haul. Our business model has been around for 20 years. We've been surviving and thriving through so many things. And, we see this kind of no differently. Of course, our stores are experiencing, a decline in revenue. They're experiencing lower capacity. We're probably operating at about 50 to 60% capacity. But, Mike created this business model so that it was adjustable. So, what that means is we are rotating our staff. So we have a lower percentage of dogs. We don't need, as many staff members on, but we're keeping their hours by being creative. There are little things that Mike built into this business model many years ago to make it as recession resilient as possible. So our focus is hunkering down, helping our franchisees every day make smart business decisions. And we're keeping that long game in their mind every single day. We're sending out messages. We send out group emails at the end of every day with all of the highlights and all of the positives that are going on in our system. And that helps some of the, more struggling locations really see the light at the end of the tunnel. So that's kind of been our perspective thus far.
Hey, Brent, Rob brought up an interesting, I think, mindset and something that I'm focused on. I know a lot of brands are, which is Q3, Q4. Rob used the word offense, and Nick and I have been talking about offensive recoveries. Are you also, from a franchise development standpoint, also are you looking toward Q4 as an offensive period to hit the accelerator?
Yeah, so there's 2 parts to that. The first being the 17 brands we represent. The team's working feverishly right now to prepare for that, and they're putting campaigns together. We're getting ready for that, and I think Q3, Q4 is the time. I look at that as a mitigated risk strategy of let's wait and see when we can start to see some of the uncertainty clear up, when we can potentially see the curve flatten in some of these regions. I think that'll clear up a lot of fear for buyers, and that'll be a great time to kind of really dive in and service all these folks that are going to be looking for franchise opportunities in the wake of unemployment and some of the other things that we've all seen come out of these types of economic climates. So we're certainly making sure that we're keeping pipelines alive. We're certainly making sure that we're being very careful and cautious with budgets right now, especially with revenues and royalties a little light. So absolutely, I think a mitigated risk is to keep some smart channels where you're really servicing those folks that are looking to buy a franchise now, without getting too aggressive with them. On the other side, for my other brand, I'm a little different. I wrote an article last week and had my position there on what I think the opportunity is right now. And I think there is a huge opportunity right now, but it does come with risk. Because again, we just don't know when this is going to start to slow down. So, but for Kid Create, we're looking at doubling down on lead generation this week. And I think that why we're doing that is because, you know, Nick, I saw you highlight this too. We're already seeing a completely uncrowded franchise marketing space. We're seeing cost per lead click on Google and Facebook drop to the levels I haven't ever seen before. We're seeing brands fall off portals. There's an incredible opportunity right now. And Kid Create's looking to take advantage of that. And I think it is an aggressive risk because we just don't know when this is going to slow down. But I think it's one that's somewhat calculated, and I feel good about taking that.
Yeah, I think what 2008 taught us is that there is opportunity for franchising on the other side of this, but it's such a delicate balance because we're dealing with like the compassion side from the health standpoint into what happens from financial stability into how do people recover from panic, that it's so hard. It's such a careful balance, but you know, eventually we're going to top out at new cases per day. And my opinion is brands that are prepared, the second that starts toppling over, those are the ones that are going to win. The other thing that I think brands should be thinking about is what is the length to get open past signing. Because the reality is, if you're looking at a 9 or a year sprint or a 2-year sprint, then franchisees that capture and get into the process now are going to find better real estate. Landlords are going to be willing to negotiate, and they can time this so that they're trying to come out of this when a predicted recovery is. But you know, from where I sit, I've not seen one expert be able to predict the end of this. It's such a complex thing that I think the thing that scares human beings right now is more so there's no defined cure. So it's still a balance. But Brent, I completely agree with you. Like franchise development is like a locomotive, and if you shut down the brakes completely, you might be playing from behind to continue on.
Yeah, and there's I don't think it's the full subset of the buyer pool right now. I think most buyers are cautious. They're stalled by the uncertainty, especially your brands that have owner-operators or first-time entrepreneurs that don't have the perspective or the experience or the understanding of what the opportunity might be here. But I mean, I can give you one example just from yesterday, actually. It was really interesting. It was brought up in a sales meeting. One of our development directors, Mike, had a call. It was an end of process, essentially a decision call. This candidate got on the phone. It was a big deal. It's for a 20-unit agreement. And this candidate gets on the phone and starts the first 10 minutes with, well, my other businesses are going terribly and I had to let these people go and I've lost so much in the stock market, and just vented for 10 minutes. So Mike thought, well, yeah, this one's done. And then quickly pivoted and turned around and said, okay, how do we sign? How do we get this thing going? And I think Mike, even in that sense, couldn't hide his shock. And he's an honest guy and sort of said, look, I didn't expect that. And the prospect responded with something that we were all marveling at yesterday, and it's so representative of that type of buyer pool right now. But he said, look, Mike, I think Warren Buffett said it best when he said that be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy. And I see light and day here, the opportunities by moving right now as opposed to waiting when everybody else does. So that was just a really interesting one case scenario yesterday that I think is reflective of what's going on with a certain type of buyer in the franchise market right now.
Rob, are you guys looking at pivots? Are you looking at opportunities? Are you looking at what comes next carefully? What's your mindset around opportunity? Yeah,
that's a great question. And what we've done is kind of structured thing under what are our 6 priorities right now. And the 6th one is what I talked about, is the play offense, not defense. And so the first thing that we're doing, and I recommend anybody do, is as best as you can, like look at the different economic leading indicators and trailing indicators. Don't pay attention to the CNNs and the news outlets. It's all kind of fluff right now. but really get into the science and look at those indicators. And then it all goes, what we're telling our team and our franchisees is absolutely we're looking at 2001, 2008, but personally and as a company, we're looking at this as more of like what happens when the country goes to a war. So Civil War, World War I, World War II. The world's going to look different when this resolves. When you look at 2008, 2001, as the country got through it, the world, for the most part, looked the same. We had to go through a downturn, and then the world looked the same. But when you look at a war, and I know that's strong language, our culture, our country, our people, and how we interacted was different. And that's how we're looking at it. So we're really looking at everything on the digital front, the experience front. It really is, and I know people keep harping on this, but this really is a tremendous opportunity for any brand and any franchise brand, because as your stores are probably slower, it's so much easier now to do some of those big pivots that you were thinking about or wanted to do, but they're hard to launch when your stores are really busy. But now's the time to do it. First of all, your team is aligned. Everybody's kind of rowing in the same direction right now. 2, you have the ability to train better, to communicate more efficiently, to get everybody all aligned. And so we're already, starting last week, all those ideas that may have been like a 2021, 2022 kind of idea, we're full steam ahead on getting those teed up for this year, early next year.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Rob, that's an amazing analysis, and following what Brent was saying too with the opportunity, for sure. I like your analysis, Rob, because the world is different tomorrow. There was here was the franchise world. This event occurs. Everything's different tomorrow, and then getting to what Brent is saying about lead generation and whatnot. Probably now this is a moment that's forged in fire, where those connections and communications with those prospects and that future generation of franchisees, there's probably not a moment like this in history in franchising. And I think, and you've been mentioning, it does, I think, Rob, you mentioned digital and the experience. So that all changes now. And I'm curious, Jackie, are to the extent you're focused on lead generation, and again, are you changing the dynamic or the focus on how you're communicating and what's important? Like what was important yesterday is not important anymore?
I feel like we've always focused on what's important to us. And what's important to us is, extensive communication with our franchisees. We're a small enough system now where we communicate with our franchisees on an everyday basis or weekly basis regularly. So not much has changed. We just, we check in every day. We want to make sure everyone feels supported, and we're here to help them make business decisions to help them get through this. But what this has provided an opportunity for us to do is we have seen such growth thanks to our franchise development team and our efforts over the past 2 years that we've had such an influx of people in the site selection and build out phase that had previously been really struggling with finding real estate. So the process was very long. We were getting in bids from contractors that were just exorbitantly high, not coming within our range that we know a facility can be built out for. So all of those franchisees in that phase are now really excited about this prospect that real estate is going to become available. Of course, we don't like to see any of our competitors or fellow business owners go out of business, but in some ways it's survival of the fittest, and we have to forge forward. So our franchisees in the beginning part of this process are really excited at the new opportunities that this will probably lead to for them. And we will be able to speed up the opening process tremendously because we now have, these new opportunities that weren't here yesterday or 2 days ago are now presenting themselves. So with so many people in that phase, we're anticipating still opening, about 7 to 10 stores this year. we still have candidates that are ready to do validation. I have had to pump the brakes on that because I want to make sure that before we send them through to validation, that the franchisees doing the validating feel comfortable and they feel like they, are in a place where they can take an hour and really have a nice perspective to be able to share with someone potentially coming into the system. So to me, it's an opportunity to slow down and catch up on all of the great things that have happened for our system over the past 2 years. But it's been incredible to see that we still have people in the pipeline who are ready and they're moving forward. I've done several executive calls in the past couple weeks, so it hasn't really. I haven't felt the effect of it slowing down yet, which has been surprising to me, and also really, really, really encouraging.
Jackie, how are your franchisees responding to this, and are they leaning on you differently than they were?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So we are a bit unique in that. I'm sorry. We are a bit unique in that we have a system that is kind of split in half. So we have about 4 to 5 franchisees who came into the system about 5, 6, 7 years ago. They're the owners of the more mature businesses. They have really benefited from a lot of success over the past 5 to 6 years. They haven't really had to go through anything like this before. So they had a different response than some of the newer people and the newer businesses who are a little bit more used to facing challenges, right? Getting to cash flow positive or finding a site, keeping build-out costs down. So we have found that we've had to triage our older franchisees a little bit differently than the newer franchisees. So it's really, I think, for us, it was just understanding where each person was coming from, what their specific fears were, and addressing those with facts. So we have the benefit of 20 years of facts, essentially, and data. And we are approaching this very, very factually, and we're trying not to project, and we're trying to address everyone's fears and their emotions, taking that into consideration with what the actual reality of their business is. So it's difficult. It's very complex, but we're lucky enough that we have a great team at corporate, and we really have enjoyed personal relationships with all of our franchisees thus far. So I think that has really helped, them get through this, that they know that they can call me at, 10 o'clock at night, and I'm going to answer the phone. So, as a smaller system, that is one of the benefits. And the other thing is, emerging brands are used to working and wearing multiple hats. So I've been doing this for the past 7 years. So to me, it's not an increased workload. It's not an increased amount of stress. It's just, these are the challenges we're used to facing as, an emerging franchisor. So.
What about you, Brent? How are you responding to franchisees with Kid Create?
Yeah, I think Jackie nailed it. Communication is the first thing. So certainly a big increase there, and it's good to see the team on that front. I think approaching it on a case-by-case basis is interesting too, because this is not a national pandemic. Well, it is, but it's certainly regionalized in terms of the impact. And there's some studios were able to be open, some were not. Some have been able to pivot in certain ways that others are not. So really working with the franchisee to build a plan with them that works in their market, I think goes a long way, rather than dictating a one-size-fits-all approach. And we've seen that kind of work well thus far.
And Rob, what about you? Just continuing on the franchisee support side.
Yeah, it's along the same lines, and there's a lot of resources out there about how to be communicating. But look, franchising's franchising, and franchisee satisfaction can fluctuate. But I would say for us, it's amazing right now. Everybody is really coming together and working. Everybody's working on this at the same level. And that kind of natural barrier between Zor and Z, it's not there right now. It's really beautiful, and it's been fantastic. And we're doing the same thing everybody else is doing. There are no working hours. We're having webinars at 8, 9 o'clock at night. We're having webinars where all the franchisees are on there to share best practices. We're communicating on a daily basis. And every single franchisee in our system is like right in there with us. And it's fantastic. It helps me always, it helps me remember like why I love franchising. I mean, it's just this beautiful, to me, business model where these people had a dream to run their own business, and now it's getting hard, but this is why you join a franchise, because now you have all the support about how to get through this. And if you were, I'm not knocking a mom and pop or an independent business, but you don't have that same level of support. Our franchisees now they're working in the stores, they're doing that, but the franchisor is looking at the bigger picture, getting all the information, translating it, and then providing it to them, whether it's a template for a landlord, how to negotiate a rent release, how to navigate SBA loans, how to create a business plan and a financial model through this. All those things we're doing and providing as a service for the franchise, and everybody's really appreciative. It's fantastic.
Hey, Brent, as we're approaching 30 minutes, and I'm curious. So strategy is Q3, Q4. You're focusing on opportunity on lead gen. Do you see the lead generation funnel, that traditional funnel, changing? I mean, what modifications are you making once that first contact occurs in terms of lead generation, qualification? Is it just modifying messages, or is it something more fundamental?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think the messaging is really important. I think you have to be very careful and thoughtful about what you're saying right now. You know, for example, we used to have killed lead messages after, say, 14 or 30 days, depending on the brand, saying, you know, you didn't respond, so I'm going to kill your file, that type of terminology. I think right now that would be a big mistake to go down that path and try and enforce timelines, both at the lead level and at the qualified applicant level. So softening that verbiage right now has been something that we've done very quickly. But preparing for what's coming, again, we don't know for sure, but our suspicion and the calculated risk that we're taking is preparing for an increase and quite a surge in the franchise buyer pool as a result of a recessionary climate, as a result of mass layoffs and unemployment. And I think that we're preparing for that right now. We've been fairly focused on automation and smart automation for the last year. I think it's critical now that is ready and firing and perfect for say, whether it's 3 months from now or 6 months from now, to make sure that we're delivering content that's relevant, that's personalized, that speaks to a buyer in that climate. And I think a buyer in that climate is more emotionally driven in their reasons to want to franchise. We're already hearing that this week, where our sales teams are reporting back to us. We're hearing a lot of things like, I want to take control of my family's future. I got laid off and I never want that to happen again. Or, you know, I like sitting at a computer and getting up at 2 in the afternoon and throwing a baseball just because I feel like doing that, and throwing the baseball with my kid. And that's kind of cool. And I like this whole work-life balance thing. And so I think that you're going to see an increase in more emotion-driven decisions to buy franchises, and you need to prepare your content for that. You need to prepare your story for that. There's a lot in preparing for that shift in both volume and in different types of buyers and in different types of reasons for joining franchises that we may not have seen before.
We've talked to several people who have talked about. Go ahead, Charles.
No, again, Nick.
So we've talked with several people about mindset. I would love to hear, Rob, starting with you, like talk about positive and negative mindset, and how do you try to keep this in the right place?
Well, for us, we go to our values, and as a team, we have an old team meeting each day. We revisit that each day. One of ours is we embrace extreme ownership, and part of that is it's not our fault, but it's our problem. We're solution focused, and that everybody on the team, franchisees to everybody, we have 3 choices, and that's it. We can choose to leave the situation, we can choose to accept it as it is, or we can choose to make it better. And we're all choosing to make it better. And what that does is allow this mindset to this solution-focused mindset. But we make a point, especially with franchisees, to balance this with honoring what the fear is. And it's a little bit of a tightrope for sure. But you've met one franchisee, everybody's reacting a little bit differently. But we're using a case-by-case basis to work with them to acknowledge the fear, but then move that into that solution-focused approach. And this is what Jackie was talking to. To move it into that solution focus, you got to be providing a plan. So what is the plan for this individual unit to get through it? And we're similar to, we've had some stores, especially like Washington, Pennsylvania, now Minnesota, very much affected by shutdowns. But some of our stores in Arizona, they're doing great. Like there just hasn't been as much of an effect. So we're building those plans with the franchisees and then working with them on a daily, weekly basis on that. And that's marketing, operations, and finance. And what that does is add into, it helps them be solution focused. It keeps the fear acknowledged, but not controlling the process.
Jackie, what about you on mindset? How do you stay positive in a time like this?
Well, I have to say sometimes it's been personally challenging, but we're wearing multiple hats too. We're not only the franchisor, but we have 2 corporate stores that are open and operating. We have a corporate team. So we have to take care of our employees at all of our stores, and also our corporate team members. So the first thing that we did when it was apparent that this was going to be a significant experience for everybody was we reached out to each of our employees individually and said, let's have a conversation about what you're fearful about, and we're keeping our stores open. Don't worry, we've got your back. And I think that message, and then after that, we piggybacked that with, let's get to work now. We're going to have to make some changes in our stores. We may have had to make some changes to operating hours to shorten them to make sure that we keep payroll on track. And some people have had their hours cut. But everybody is really in it together. And I think this is the time that we've seen our employees really flourish because we've built this culture of support and of kind of a family-like culture for years and years and years. And now is the time when they feel like they really need to do their part and they're not walking away from this. So to have that at the corporate level, at our corporate stores and on our franchise team, we're infecting that to them, and they are in turn turning around and they're exuding that to all of our customers and all the franchisees that they're supporting on an everyday basis. So mindset is totally, completely important. And even if it's a bad day, to me, I take a minute, I take an hour, I take a night, and I just say, okay, I'm not going to respond to this now. I just need a minute to process it, and then I'm going to respond. So it's been challenging to remove the emotion for sure, especially because people are emotional about this, and totally understandably so. But trying to remain just really steadfast. And, that's why we send out an email at the end of every day, and we highlight all of the positive things that are going on in our facilities. We still have new dogs coming into our facilities every day. We have new evaluations. So that to us says everything. People still need us. We want, if you're a location that's not experiencing that, let's help understand how we can help get you there, because this is happening in other stores. So, sharing that positivity with some of the other stores that need it has been a very powerful and moving experience, I think, for everybody.
What I find, so we've been doing these conversations and I'm amazed about connecting all the dots. And I think Rob had mentioned that this crisis, we could call it an inflection point, is really demonstrating the value of the franchisor-franchisee relationship. And as Brent, you, Jackie, Rob, as you guys are speaking, I mean, there's a lot of commonality because I hear a lot about, and it's amazing. It's a credit to franchising. It's a credit to your organizations, but like I'm hearing a focus go back to culture, values, strategy, mindset, and planning, right? All the things that when things are going well, maybe you could ignore, but these to me are consistent themes. And I love, Rob, the focus, you know, with your team on going back to values all the time, right? And it sounds like just a formula, like, oh, every company has values. But when you really develop core values and your team lives by it, it transforms. And I'm just amazed about all the commonality in all of these conversations from good franchisors.
Absolutely. And look, everybody, if you're in business, you hear about values, and we talk about it. Enron had their values chiseled into granite in their lobby, but they weren't living it. At the end of the day, values, they're words. It's how you live them. It's the actions behind it. And if you don't, especially as a leader of your brand, if you don't believe it in your gut, if you don't just, it's what drives you, people are going to pick up on you're just talking some words. But you got to live it every day, talk about it every day, especially in these times. And again, it's not a perfect answer. The values don't tell you where to go, but by coming back to them every day, it is that it's that lighthouse through the fog. And every brand's going to have their specific answer. But you know, if you're looking at what Brent is doing with RainTree, they're changing people's lives. That's what they do. And as their team comes back to that, for what Jackie is doing with helping out first responders, what we're doing with our guests and our franchisees, the magnitude of this is so paramount, because by approaching these with a practical mindset, we will get through this and we will change lives. And that sounds like a big statement, but I firmly believe this for any franchise brand. And that's the angle that can also be used as you're looking at this with a prospect on the development side that Brent's speaking to. Hey, something like this will happen again. It may be 10 years from now, maybe 5 years, nobody knows. But imagine going through this on your own. Now imagine going through it with a franchise behind you who is helping you. And here we are, and now we can also show how we as brands help franchisees through these type of situations, because they will guaranteed happen again sometime in the future.
Let's Brent, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot, and I think we've covered most of the thoughts. I mean, I do think that you're right. In mindset probably is the most important thing to focus on here. And I think that, you know, we're communicating with our teams. I don't think the worst of this is over. While I'm telling the story of a positive uptick, in fact, already a surge in franchise interest, do I think that we're out of the woods? Absolutely not. Do I think we're going to get kicked a couple more times? Absolutely. And I think until the uncertainty clears up, fear is going to be rampant. And we have to really focus on how we deal with that fear. And both for franchisees and for folks in franchise development, really the best thing that we're focused on and what we're really trying to accomplish here is, even in those days where you get kicked down, where you lose deals or brands or whatever it is, the key to fighting fear, and fear has an effect of paralysis on us, and that's what can happen here. But what we're trying to do at RainTree and Key Creators, just one step at a time. Let's stay focused on the project. Let's stay focused on getting that next thing done, because once you've got that next thing done right now in an environment like this, it builds momentum and it allows positivity to kind of build naturally on its own. If you slow down and stop and succumb to fear and it can have that halting effect, it can really damage your company. So we're focused one project, one thought at a time, and optimism and positivity naturally comes out of that.
Jackie, final thoughts?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Brent more. That's the approach that we're taking, you know, one day at a time. And we're triaging with our franchisees. But there's a lot of challenges that everyone in our system has faced. There's a lot of uncertainty, but what we do know and what we're leaning into are our customers. And, we have had some real emotional moments. I was in our corporate store yesterday and took a phone call from a customer who is not a first responder. She's not a nurse. She's been one of our best customers for 10 years. And she said, I want to pay for this other customer that she knows is a nurse and is working in New York City now. She has 3 dogs and she needs us for pet care. And she said, I want to pay for her 3 dogs for the entire week. Please put, $200 on her account. And that is so moving. I mean, so it's things like that. It's little things that I think in life before this, I wasn't paying attention to, right? Because I was so focused on other things, but having more time to go into the store, see our customers face to face and just spend time with the dogs. I mean, the dogs are the saving grace in all of this. So I think that just having the time to enjoy those moments, and those are the things that are personally getting me through this. And I share those moments with all of our franchisees so that they are taking the time to, yes, it's easy to focus on the negative, but go into your stores and look at all of the positive things that are going on. Look at the 30 and 40 dogs you have in there and be grateful and humble. And I just personally believe that gratitude and humility are critically important at this moment. And, we're just, that's really what we're trying to convey to all of our franchisees.
Okay.
Rob,
Something
final thoughts?
we're doing, these are just sharing best practices. We're recommending to our franchisees and our corporate stores, we are doing this. We're going through our customer list with the ones where we have the addresses, and we're putting together care packages. And we're just delivering it with just a handwritten note saying, thank you, we appreciate you. If you need anything, we're here. And I love what Jackie's doing with the, really looking at the first responders and that sort of thing. And I think as franchising as a whole, we're all in this, the more those best practices get out there, this isn't a time to, hold on to like your good idea and not share it. The more people share it, the more the whole country is going to do better.
Love it. And Charles, final thoughts?
Yeah, I appreciate Brent's practical viewpoint and everyone's that the worst isn't over. But again, great leadership. So what everyone's communicating here, and for me, connecting those dots, Jackie mentioning, even using the words about leaning in, which came up during our call with Big Blue, which kind of moved me. And I love the fact that we don't know when that uptick will happen. And like Brent said, we're going to get hit a couple more times, but it really comes down to mindset, strategy, and values. And I think that's what I'm taking out of all of this.
So the last thing that I would say is there was a point when McDonald's starts and the founders are super pumped because they just sold Burger 1, and then super pumped when they sold Burger 2. And the amount of gratitude and excitement when you're going like this feels amazing, that even in our new norm, we may have dipped down a little bit. But if you get your mindset and say, boy, it's really cool that we have these customers and we have these opportunities, and you change your mindset that not where do we fall from, but where are we now and where can we go, then all category can have a lot of success. But the truth is, us as human beings, nobody knows really what's going on. This is a scary thing, and it's okay to be scared. It's good to be positive. On the other side of this, hopefully, there's something amazing, because every time we've gone through a bumpy time in franchising, especially from an economic standpoint, the silver lining is that there is something incredible on the other side of this. I want to thank everyone for being a part of our discussion today. For anybody that's watching, make sure that you join our private Facebook group. We have a great community that's building. Over the last 3 days, we've gone from, in essence, 0 to 259 members. Great conversations going on over there. Thank you to our panelists for joining us today, and I wish you all the very best of luck. Take care.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers, Nick. Thanks, Charles.
Thanks.